welcome, Dirk.
Thank you.
Want to talk a little bit about when and where you were born and how long you've lived in our community.
Well, I was born at Doctor's Hospital here in Columbus. We lived on the east side for my first 2 years, but moved to Grandview, or to Marble Cliff actually, in 1934 and lived at 1410 Arlington Avenue. That used to be my understanding is they used to be the gardener's house for the Casparis mansion across the street. But it gradually was added onto. My dad added onto it, and other people did as well. But we lived there until 1943, I think it was, when we moved to 1087 Lincoln Road. And I lived there through high school and through college, and actually I lived there except for being away at college and in the Army. I lived there until I got married.
So you've been around many years.
That's right. And after I got married, my wife and I lived in Columbus for 2 years or a little over 2 years maybe, and then we bought a house in Marble Cliff and lived there until I moved out about 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah.
And you're still in the area.
And still in the area. I'm close.
Good for you. What can you tell me about high school, and what do you remember what it was like when you were at Grandview High School years ago?
You know, it was very routine. You know, we walked to school. I had the same routine when I lived on Arlington Avenue. I would meet Jack White, who lived a little bit up the street. Can't think who lives there now. Maybe you know, but just on the other side of where Mayor Falco used to live many years ago. But I'd meet Jack and we'd walk to school, and then when I moved to Lincoln Road, I would still meet him on the corner at Lincoln and First, and we'd walk to school. I think we did that all through school. And we would generally see Diana Gonser on the way, and because she would be walking from her house on Arlington Avenue. And we always came home for lunch too. Back then it was, for the most part, the fathers and husbands worked, and the wives were stay-at-home wives, and they were one-car families. So you'd go home for lunch, and there were some people, I think that they had a school cafeteria, but I don't think a very high percentage of the kids ate at it. You know. But as I say, it was very routine. We did the same thing day in and day out, year in and year out.
So do you have a special memory, though, about a favorite teacher or a favorite activity in high school?
Oh, I had some favorite teachers. I don't have a special memory, well, except Mrs. Peck. And Mrs. Peck was the only teacher who called me Dirkin. I mean, I always went by Dirk, but Mrs. Peck was quite formal, and she called me Dirkin. And she seemed to, my feeling was she treated everyone as sort of an adult. She treated everyone with respect and didn't look down on anybody, and it made you feel like a young adult with Mrs. Peck, I thought.
What did she teach? What did Mrs.
She
Peck
taught
teach?
English.
English.
She was an English teacher. Very small woman. I don't suppose she was more than about 5'2" or something like that. And I liked Mrs. Lambert. She was the Latin teacher, and I think, well, I took 4 years of Latin. I think they taught 4 years of Latin. But I also liked her because she put Jack White and I in touch with her husband, who was a tennis player. And in the summertime, he would take us out to Westgate Park on the west side, and we'd play tennis under the lights out at Westgate Park, which was a treat for Jack and me because we played with some nice tennis players. And again, Mr. Lambert treated us like older people and made us feel good. Yeah.
So was there a tennis team at Grandview High School back then?
Oh yes, yeah.
And you were on the team?
There had been, yeah, I played on the tennis team. And there had been a team for a good many years. There were some good tennis players. I remember Ralph Haverfield was a...
That's the house I lived in.
It's the same house. I knew he was right at that, near
yes.
there. But he was a very good tennis player. And then Bill Pickett, of course, played when he was in school. And yeah, Jack and I, well, I think Jack first, probably when we were in junior high, he just suggested for something to do because we didn't have many things to do. He thought since there was a tennis court right across the street from the high school that we might take up tennis, just something to do. So we just went down and hit and, you know, taught each other, learned by ourselves. We didn't have any lessons from anyone. But, and then I'm sure Mr. Lambert helped to teach us a little bit. And so we played all through high school on the tennis team. And I played on the football team, and we had a good football team. And
beat Upper Arlington occasionally, maybe?
we beat them my sophomore year. We lost to them 13-7, I think, or 13-6 my junior year, and we had the famous 6-6 tie my senior year.
And that memory stays with you,
It
doesn't
sure does.
Wow. Any other organizations you were in besides your sports teams?
Class officers, I'm sure there were a handful of us that sort of exchanged class offices. The Brotherhood of Rooks was a very big part of my activities, and I was talking with three of my classmates last night and going through some of the questions that I thought you might be asking me, and some of them, well, what did you do, and what do you remember, what are special events? And they all just sort of said, well, we just hung out. They don't remember any special things, nor do I. We just hung out with your friends, and because you weren't watching television or weren't driving any place or going to many things, so you just hung out.
And Grandview was a community for that. So describe for me what you think you were like when you were in high school. Were you a student? Were you an athlete? Were you?
Oh, I was a better student than an athlete, I think. And I enjoyed school. But I enjoyed athletics too. And well, you did everything with your friends. And the sports were with my friends that I ran around with. And but I enjoyed school, the academic side of things. But again, I mentioned the Brotherhood of Rooks. We spent an awful lot of time at the Rook House. If we weren't practicing some sport, if we weren't on a sports team, we would many times go to the Rook House after school and then have Friday night dances. Most Friday nights, I think, during the school year. And then after the Friday night dance, we'd go to the Rook House on Saturday and clean it up. And so we spent a lot of time there and have meetings every Monday night. So we spent a lot of time there. Yeah.
That is something that they don't do now. So
That's
that
right.
was important in your life back then.
Yes, it was, very much so.
Did you meet your wife in high school?
I knew her in high school. She was a year behind me, and we had a few dates. I remember I went to a Christmas dance with her, and she lived on Lincoln Road. I think when I went to pick her up, this was before Christmas, but she had a Christmas ornament, just a very small Christmas ornament with the name Sharon and Dirk on it, and I still have that ornament.
Aww.
But we didn't date very much. She had, I don't remember who she dated really, and I had other girls I dated, but I did date her a little bit. Yeah.
Great. Is there one favorite memory other than that football game? Any other favorite memory of high school that you will always treasure?
You know, the only thing that would maybe fall in that category, and I'm not sure you call it treasuring it or not, but that would be the bottle hunt when you're initiated into the Rooks. Because, and I don't know if you know how that worked, but the actives would hide about 8 or 9 bottles in various places around Columbus, not just Grandview, but the skunks, who was what all the pledges were called, had to go find those bottles. You know, I don't know what they call them now, treasure hunts or something, but in this case it was called a bottle hunt. And they would sometimes, and you'd get the bottle at the first location, then be told where the next location was, and they'd maybe string them up on a flagpole or something like that. And usually at those places where the bottles were, there would be actives there with paddles, and they'd swat you while you were trying to get the bottle. And this took place all through the night. And then at the end of the night, about 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you'd go back to the rook house, and so that stands out in my memory.
I guess it would.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add to our conversation here?
Well, I guess I might just add that my dad was active with the library, was president of the board for some years, and my wife was on the board. So we've had a close affiliation with the library. I always remember having dinner in high school when we generally all ate together at home, and Dad would get home late from work, and I think the board meetings were on Monday night, maybe, although I could be wrong on that. But he would keep looking at his watch to know when he had to leave for the board meeting, and he usually wouldn't leave the table until after the time the board meeting started.
Oops.
So I'm sure he walked in late all the time, and that was just his practice. But we were all conscious of the library because he left the dinner table to go to the meetings.
Did you use the library a lot as a student?
I think I did, yeah, yes. Miss Swinehart was always there at the desk when you walked in, and I used it quite a bit, yes.
She probably knew you too. She
Well, I
knew
think she did,
your
yeah.
father. Sure.
I don't know how long she was here, but I think
time.
a long. So she's the only one I can remember from probably my early school years, perhaps through high school. I don't remember when she left, but she was a force. You didn't mess around in her presence. And of course, the library then was so much smaller. It just occupied a fraction of what it does now. And there was the bicycle shop on the corner, and the little memorial
Park.
the little
Yeah.
memorial park. Yes.
For the local service members killed in action.
Right. And the library just keeps growing, and they even moved across the street, bought land across the street now. But
right next to where your office was.
That's right.
Until a few years ago.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
So the library's been an important part of your
Yes.
your life here, as well as the school district.
Yes.
And you have, is it 5 children who went
4
to
children.
4 children who went to Grandview High School
They
as well?
all went to Grandview, all graduated from Grandview. I think all went to Grandview, I think grades 1 through 12, as far as I can recall.
And tennis players.
And most of them were tennis players, yes. And they've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of that. And they all still live in the Columbus area, mostly in Dow, of course. My son lives in Marble Cliff, in my old house, near your old house.
Kept it in the family, right?
That's right. And the 3 girls live in Dublin, but, close by.